welcome. I hope you guys have had a good lunch and are enjoying your afternoon here at the Space and Rocket Center. My name is Heather Roden. I work here in the Education Department, and I just wanted to welcome you guys to the presentation on Agentic AI for Human-Centric Behavioral Intelligence. And we're going to get started with that in just a second. Before I introduce our presenters, I did want to make you guys aware that due to the schedule changes today, the Cocktails and Cosmos Planetarium show is being moved up to 5 o'clock this afternoon. So you don't have to wait around. You can go join us across the parking lot in the planetarium, and that will be at 5 o'clock. And I'll remind you at the end as well. But in the meantime, I would like to introduce, I'm so sorry, I'm knocking things off in the floor. Dr. Kristin Weger is a clinical associate professor of engineering management in the Industrial and Systems Engineering and Engineering Management Department at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. She also directs the Leadership and Organizational Behavioral Laboratory. Her expertise spans behavioral science, the identification of behavioral features in complex systems, lean and agile leadership development, organizational transformation, operations and shop floor management, emotional intelligence, and the digitalization, that was hard to say, sorry, of regulatory and operational processes. With over a decade of consulting and research experience, Dr. Weger has partnered with global organizations across the defense, aerospace, automotive, construction, manufacturing, and energy sectors. Internationally recognized for her work in process and leadership excellence, she has trained more than 500 leaders at all organizational levels, from frontline supervisors to executives. Also, Dr. Vineetha Menon is an associate professor of computer science and director of the Big Data Analytics Laboratory at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. She has over a decade of expertise in multidisciplinary data science research, including generative AI, bias and transparency in large language models, deep learning, AI-driven drug discovery, cybersecurity explainable AI, and the human AI trust. Dr. Menon has advised defense, industrial, and global clients on human AI teaming, performance prediction, organizational resilience, and risk mitigation frameworks. She is widely recognized as a mentor, speaker, and AI visionary, with invitations to present at international technical conferences, defense symposiums, executive summits, and media outlets. Her recognitions include the 2023 IEEE Region 3 Outstanding Young Professional Award, the 2022 IEEE Huntsville Young Professional of the Year Award, and the 2021 IEEE Ada Kappa Nu Outstanding Young Professional Award, alongside the 2020 National Academy's Early Career Fellowship for the AI-driven disaster resilience research. She has also been honored locally as a Huntsville Chamber Mover and Shaker, Top 40 Under 40, and 25 Outstanding Alumni by Mississippi State University, and that was just last year. Yeah, please make welcome our speakers.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Heather. Can everybody hear me all the way to the back? Yay!
Can everybody hear me? Very good. We're ready then.
Alrighty. So I'm sure you've heard about so many wonderful speakers talk about agentic AI. Why is this important? Why do we need to really get in this room and talk about agentic AI? That's the buzzword out there. But most of the times, agentic AI focuses on automation and at scale. And that's why we love it, right? It's great because it can handle massive amounts of data. But what if we can broaden our horizon and think of an agentic AI that not just automates the tasks, but works with humans to make their life better? Right? So that is the bold question we're asking today. What is a design of an agentic AI that is not centered around automation of tasks, but with human-centric behavior intelligence? So, Dr. Weger?
Yes, so let's just think about all the different behaviors that are coming to play in stressful situations at work, right? Oftentimes what we see when we have high stress environments is there is some form of miscommunication happen. And when we look at the communication data, we see that for an organization, they pay annually $12,000 just because we couldn't communicate right. So that's exacerbated, meaning that 70 to 80% of all the failures that we see or incidents that are leading to a system failure at the end are attributed to miscommunication. Beyond miscommunication, there are also cognitive behaviors, right, that are at risk. Maybe we're not sharing the same image. We're not sharing the same picture of what's going on. So we have a misalignment of our shared situational awareness. It might also be that we're presented with way too much information to make a decision. It's not, we have vast amounts of information available, which is great sometimes, right? But which decision to make, and if we're making that in a quick moment, we see by research that 50 to 70% of the incidents are cognitive overload. And we see it specifically in our mission-centered operating rooms and other incidents. And all of this becomes then it's leading into poor coordination that also results in it and poor or delayed decision making. So what we see is there's this reason model, right? Probably most of you have heard of it, the Swiss cheese model, that every factor contributes to the overall failure then. And oftentimes when we look at it, and research has identified it, it's humans. It's still the humans. It's not the AI that is failing. It's not the technology. It's before that, what we have designed. It's our interaction that are failing. So here's the question, Dr. Menon. What are we optimizing then currently if we're not optimizing our humans?
That's a great question, Dr. Weger. So that's the state of art today, right? We are excited about agentic AI because we are automating at scale. And why do we need this automation scale? So we are trying to automate data coming from not just one source. We are bombarded with data coming from multiple different sources, right? Think about satellites, data, image, video streams, or even think about communication patterns, behaviors, and telemetry logs, and all kinds of data flowing in. And it is simply impossible for a human to digest that data alone. So it's great to have an AI come in and look at the massive amounts of data going from really petabytes to exabytes scale and be able to do that automation. And the next step where we most utilize AI is once we have acquired the data, let's do some kind of analytics on it. Let's do prediction, forecasting. Let's do the context-based analyses. Let's put it to use. And again, this could look like forecasting, anomaly detection, depending on different application, target detection, and so on. So AI is really great at identifying patterns at scale. As humans, we have that ability too. We are really good at instantaneously doing great things as pattern recognition. So you can look at somebody and say, hey, there's something different about you. But what is it? I may not be able to pinpoint, but I know there's something different about you. Right? So we are good at knowing in relative terms, but AI is really good at putting things down in quantitative, qualitative terms and saying, hey, let me measure and tell you what's good. And again, being able to consistently replicate at scale. And finally, the precision. So once you've done all the data analytics and cranking out the data, coming up with precision metrics and validating the models, 90% accuracy, 97, be it recall errors, area under the curve, signal to noise ratio, whatever is that you're trying to hold the model by, the performance, measure the performance of the model by, we have those precision metrics and throughput metrics to say, hey, my model works. Right? And it consistently works throughout the scale. And finally, the dashboard. So this is where the power lies, so the value of transformation lies. And usually when I say dashboard is really important because that's where the human talks to everybody else, my computer science students really hate me because they love writing thousands of lines of code and I have to tell them, yeah, it's great, but at the end the value and the transformation really matters. And this is exactly why dashboard or some kind of human-machine interface is where the power lies. How can I crank all of that analytics that I've done and be able to convey it in a way that everybody understands, be it heat maps, qualitative, quantitative metrics, throughput, whatever, prediction errors. So you have a really nice GUI, a dashboard where you can communicate the data. So yes, AI can be used in multiple modes of refinement, where you take your data, convert it to value, and transformation of it is where the power is at scale. And consistently, we are trying to optimize with respect to tasks and applications, right? So data, depending on my application, I have a particular set of tasks, and I'm doing prediction for a particular end task, and I'm getting my output and dashboard, which again, geared to a specific end task. But again, if I'm doing just task-based optimization, where is human in the loop coming in, right? So yes, of course, there has been some research on human in the loop, but we are not exactly optimizing the whole system for the human who is getting all the data and interacting with the loop so that the system can evolutionarily learn. So this is exactly where we need to think of a new way of designing systems where humans can actually account for and understand the value of AI.
Because what we see, we have, on one hand, our systems, our organizations, our missions where our people are working in. They're coordinating, they're interacting, they're showing a behavior, right? With that, on one hand, but on the other hand, we have our algorithms, we have our models that are supporting task optimization, us to get even faster, right? But those two worlds, they are actually not very much touching because the AI model does not currently understand how we as humans think, how we currently perceive information, how errors are going to occur, or whether that is systematic or whether that's random. So with that, we're actually optimizing the AI currently quite for the wrong operational objectives, not in line with the human and how the human thinks and acts and decides.
So why is it important to understand how the human thinks and adjust a model based on what the human thinks? So one of the important ways, or the grounding ways of understanding the cognitive modeling aspect of humans is going back to the basics of OODA loop. How many of you have heard about OODA loop? Right? US Air Force, we've always heard about some form of OODA loop, which was actually designed in the 1970s by Colonel Boyd for optimizing the way the information is presented for the fighter pilots. So what we did was we took that optimization in and we asked the question, how can AI come and optimize the whole loop just like how human thinks and processes? Because guess what? At the end of the day, it's the human who is working with the system to achieve a particular task, right? So that's exactly where we brought in human-centered modeling-based approach using OODA loop, which not only takes into the factor of how we think, we act, and we process information, but also includes situational awareness. As the information moves through the loop, how are we understanding, reacting, and adapting to the information in the loop? And how can we better be equipped to make the right decisions?
So when we talk about situational awareness, situational awareness is actually overlaying on the OODA loop. It has been derived by Ainsley in 1997, I think. She was working with fighter pilots and flight pilots specifically. And what we see is that back then, we did not really understand what's happening. How do humans perceive? The information is there, right? Stimulus are there. We have certain filters as well within our brain based on the experience, the values, the beliefs, the attitudes that we're holding, the training that we have. So those are all filters when the information is coming in that is already our brain is already trying to regulate the noise, right? So we're based on attention. On that then, we're going into the aspect of perception. So we're perceiving that information, the brain is trying to understand what's going on. So there's a portion of understanding what that information means in relation to myself as a person, what I'm doing, and in relation to what is happening in the environment, right? Or what is happening with my team members specifically. Next, then, situational awareness is also then the aspect of projecting of what could happen next, right? So we need to look into the future state of, I kind of understand the situation, what's going on, and I'm thinking that if we're continuing like this, we will not have the same understanding of the information, and we should be talking to each other, just as an example. And then after that, we decide. So situational awareness has been found to be very important in the OODA loop when we're looking at the observe and the orient stage. And that's what we did specifically when we're trying to model things. And we're going to go a little bit more into biology here. But when we look at decision-making specifically, for a small task, it takes 200 to 300 milliseconds for a person to go through that loop, right? And here I'm talking about the loop of the information is coming in, it's being picked up by our eyes, it's then being sent to the area in the brain that's being processing that information. It's then being compared to mental models and other models that we hold about what's happening, right? And then, maybe then, we might be motivated to react. We might be motivated to be reacting, right? Or we react. So then it's stimulating basically our motor neurons. They're sent to our arms, and that's when we do something. So it's, that's a simple task. Simple decision. So sensory encoding lies roughly between 20 to 50 milliseconds, and those are just estimates because it's very much dependent on the task, the situation, the information coming in, right? Cortical interpretation for simple 100 to 200 milliseconds, and then cognitive processing, which is very complex, 500 milliseconds and more, sometimes even days, right? I mean, when we think about our projects, making a decision does take longer than just 500 milliseconds. We might need a week for that. So we see of how much effort and how much energy we're putting into that. And that might be quite different than AI decision time, right? I mean, when we look at the numbers.
Right. And thank you for bringing it up, right? And that's where we all get stuck, in looking at the numbers game, right? So we are playing the wrong game here. Because yes, you look at the cognitive decision making and we've realized that, human decision making is a complex process. It takes anywhere in hundreds of milliseconds to thousands sometimes, depending on the task, context, application, and the complexity to make a decision. And AI, on the other hand, yes, it is fantastic as far as numbers game is concerned, because it can make decisions, like small language models and so on, in terms of like milliseconds, 1 to 10 milliseconds, 5 milliseconds, and more complex reasoning tasks can take hundreds of milliseconds. So you can always debate if it is a numbers game, hey, I can beat AI in less than a few milliseconds over here or over there. But that's the wrong question. We are not looking at AI trying to beat or match the numbers of human. Instead, what we are trying to achieve, and where the power of human AI teaming lies, is how can we leverage the strengths of each other, right? Where the human can do best in higher level cognitive reasoning and decision-making capacity, ethical reasoning, and the AI can beat in terms of consistency and making those mundane decisions that might require a lot of cognitive effort. So consistency is the word, right? So if a human might be able to make good bit of decisions, maybe megabytes, gigabytes, but as and when the data scale increases, there is heavy proportional cognitive load being imposed on us, right? So think about consistently just looking at a screen and monitoring. We all do doom scrolling, right? And then 1 hour later, how did I end up here? And we don't know what happened in that 1 hour because our brain is automating the task. Now, bring AI in, let the cognitive load of monitoring or passive low-level tasks go to the AI agent, right? And that frees up our space for more complex decisions. So the question really is, how can we take advantage of the best characteristics of both of us, that is both the human and the AI side, so that AI can do its own jobs in automation, where we are opening up more space for critical thinking and more higher level tasks for the human for decision making. And here are just some easy ways to understand how AI and humans are really good at different tasks. So it's about working as a team and not working against each other, right? So AI is really good in high-speed pattern recognition. Again, recognition at scale. So at scale means reducing the cognitive overload what human operators might have to deal with, right? And then pattern recognition at scale. So everything at scale, monitoring large data streams and so on, pattern recognition, coming up with new knowledge, or even seemingly extension of the current knowledge and identifying new patterns. AI is great at doing that at scale. Now let's look at what we are good at. Right? We are really good at ethical reasoning, contextual judgment, and understanding the social cues and human behavior. And unfortunately, this point is most important and the most ignored one at that. So let's say we're having a conversation, Dr. Weger, right?
Okay.
So the Cosmos and cocktails is bumped up to 5 o'clock, right?
It is, yes.
Are you going?
I am going. Are you?
Well, I might be going.
Why? Tell me more.
So let's see how many of you in the room think would I go to Cosmo and cocktails or would I not go to Cosmo and cocktails? Based on my response, not. How about, let's do this again. Why don't you ask me the same question, Dr. Weger? Would you be going to the
Are you going to the Cosmo?
Yes, I'm definitely going to Cocktail and Cosmos.
You sound...
I said the same thing.
You sound very excited about that.
I know, thank you. Right? So what was the difference over here? It was the tonality, it was the context, it was the behavior, the body language. I can say the exact same thing, and AI just reads the sentence and misses out all of the behavior cues about if I would go or not go. And remember, that was a decision-making process, right? So based on that, I decided if I went or did not go, and that was a prediction decision that AI would have to make in real world. But now convert that into a high-stakes scenario where you're communicating with a team. You're not working alone. You need deadlines. You need things to be done, deliverables. You're expecting information coming in. And what misses out in this automation is context. And AI lacks context and judgment. And human beings are really good at that.
We are. We are also very good in reading nonverbal communication. So that AI hasn't figured out either yet.
No, but we have.
We do.
So let's see how we have designed a system like this. So before I go into how agentic AI could come in and automate different stages, I want to share a personal experience of being a speaker last year at the AI Symposium, and we were given this opportunity to do space camp, and I was so excited, and especially the missions part. There was a moon mission and Mars mission, and I was the pay-com person in Mars mission, the unsexy job, and you have to sit in a control room, or so I felt. Like everybody got randomly pegged. They got to go out and do fancy stuff and be a research scientist.
I was.
I know, you were. I was
scientist.
jealous. I know. And I could see her through the screen, and I had my headphones, and I had a script in front of me, right? Ideal world, right? I have a script I just have to follow. But it was so intense, despite having a script. And if you're coming from aviation industry, you know what I'm talking about, right? Even if you have a script, things have to move in every second. There's a decision happening. I have to communicate with the shuttle. I have to communicate with the research scientists who are doing their own experiments. I have to log the data from the ground station, the weather, and I have to do all of this simultaneously, almost. And miss a beat, and then the trajectory of the space station, people who like you were on board, right?
Yes.
Might end up somewhere else. You start to go for moon, and you might find yourself, I don't know, in Pluto or something.
I was at Mars.
You was in Mars?
I went at Mars.
Yeah,
yes.
so yeah, if I forgot where you were, you would have ended up in Pluto. So we had a good bit of rapport, but the problem was I was not just doing one task, I was doing so many tasks, and I had a script, and yet I was struggling for the first few minutes to adjust to my new role. Right? So imagine having an AI assistant to help me with different modalities of data, right? That could just take care of the shuttle, and I have another one logging in the experiments from the scientists, another one talking to, other chemical engineers out there, or knowing the weather of the space or trajectory of the shuttle. And every agent does its own thing, condenses the information, and gives it to me in the processing phase. Right? And then can prioritize the decisions based on whatever the information was found, and gives me options saying, hey, you have to respond to this emergency. You just code it into the mission, by the way. We did have some kind of, oh my God, how do we handle situations, which we weren't told. And I had a code book that I had to refer when something beeped red. Okay, so I have a script, I have a code book, and I'm flipping the pages to figure out what the code is and what I have to do. And God almighty, I really appreciated people in the control room more than ever. Right? So that's exactly where an agent could not just take in the data, crunch into information, and do the predictions for me, but also give me options and give me priority, saying this code red is more important than another code red, right? So if a plant is not responding to growth, which they had somebody growing plants in Mars or Moon and so on, and then another one was weather prediction was red, guess who gets a priority? The weather. Because you're out there in space, right? So this is where I could have used help of the agent, come in and prioritize the options and say, here is my recommendation for decision 1, here is my recommendation for decision 2, and here is the reason why. And finally, the human in the loop can make the decision. That would have immensely reduced my cognitive load, right? And improved my accuracy and improved trust. So this is where we can leverage human and AI teaming for better decision making.
And I think improving trust, if your AI agent would have seen that you're highly stressed and talk to you in a way that is comforting to you during that time, that would improve trust even more.
Absolutely. And another point that I haven't addressed so far is AI is optimizing my tasks, but it's still not talking to me and not understanding where my brain is at in different phases of processing. Right? So let's say we successfully automated it, but you don't know where my mental state is when I'm going through all these siloed versions of data processing.
So we started asking ourselves, okay, what if AI could do that, right? What if AI didn't just predict any outcomes, but could take those behaviors into account? What if it could model of how we as humans and as teams actually decide, how we actually coordinate, how to read that behavior and the nonverbal or communication, specifically tonality and so forth? What if it reasoned about situational awareness in a way that we now understand where we at and where we missed information, where we can share information? Or what if we supported the human decision loop in a way that we're not bypassed, right? We're actually taking into account. So those were the questions that we were raising each other. And that's why we also built something what we refer to Orbit platform to actually do that. And we're going to show you what we did here specifically. So we wanted it to mimic how humans actually decide. So on one hand, it would be able to predict, or not predict, but we would be able to model all the different levels of situation awareness, because that's important. If I tell you that our project is due next week, right? You just received that information. It's due next week, okay, that's what I perceived, right? But then the second, what does it mean? Are we late? Is next week late? Or is next week on target, right? So, and then the third is, okay, we're receiving it next week, what happens next? So we need to think about these aspects also specifically when we're developing that platform or the AI for it.
So let's talk about how do we make this happen in practice. What is this OODA-centric design even going to look like as far as AI is concerned, right? So what we did is we superimposed OODA logic into the whole design architecture on its own. So the system is not just optimizing task, but the system is designed to think, act, adapt like us. So what is going to happen in the observe phase of the OODA loop inspired design here? So in the observe, we have multiple modalities of information coming in from the environment. So this is your communication, sensor data. Like I was in Paycom, I have the scripts, and I have to ask all the information coming in from the environment. And it has human inputs, mission context, and also information that my peers or my team members need to complete their task. So the observation is just, let me get everything from the environment. And the orient is where we start weaving in those situational awareness concepts into our architecture. So in the orient phase, we are not just getting the information, but we are extracting context-oriented beliefs of the information. So this is exactly where the perception comes in. I know my data that has come in, but what do I understand about the data? What is my context related to the data? That would be comprehension. And then projection is, well, knowing that the data is this, and knowing I have a context related to missions and goals that I have to complete, what is my game plan in making that happen? Do I have a game plan? What does that look like, right? So we are now tying our situational awareness to the task, to the mission, to the goal. And it's not considered as independent optimization anymore. And on top of that, Orbit, our intelligent platform, is also monitoring team alignment and also the cognitive load selection and distribution. So in team alignment basically means that if I'm Paycom, I have to get different data from different people, and I have to communicate my data to somebody else too, because I'm not the only person in the control room. There are many people in the same team in the control room who are living off of each other's information. Everybody needs that collaboration and coordination to finish the task. So Orbit is listening in to all of those behavioral cues, what is happening, the information being passed. Are we on the same page as far as the goal is concerned? Or is somebody else kind of off? So let's say if I am in the projection phase, I have a game plan, and I'm talking to Dr. Weger here, and Dr. Weger needs more information or perhaps is not in alignment with where I am, right?
Yes, I'm not. I don't see where you're going here.
I know, right? So please stay with me. I promise I will deliver. So that's exactly where cognitive load balancing comes into place, because now Orbit can say, well, maybe Dr. Weger needs more information, or she needs information from different sources, or she is cognitively overwhelmed, right? So we do have physiological behaviors, communication patterns being weaved in. So then Orbit can say, maybe we need to take a little bit of load off Dr. Weger, dump it on poor me or somebody else, be the scapegoat, and then we can make things happen, right? So that's basically what the Orient phase is trying to do. So Orient is weaving in the situational awareness in relationship to the context, and also keeping track of any kind of data bias, algorithmic bias, any kind of misinterpretation, communication happens between the both of us. It's keeping track of all of that information. And finally, it moves into the decide phase. So decide phase is the reasoning engine of the Orbit. So this is exactly where it's taking in all the situational awareness from the previous phase of Orient and understanding, well, what do I need to do, reason with the information I have to complete this task. Am I on the right trajectory? What kind of risk assessment mitigation do I have to do? What does my projected scores look like? Are there any decision delays? So when I'm asking the question to Dr. Weger, am I getting an immediate response back, or is there a delay? And is the delay a constant delay or an increasing delay? Right? So these are those nuances that we're capturing to say, well, constant, maybe we are okay, right? We're still moving towards the same goal, but if it is an increasing delay, there's something happening on her end that I'm not aware of, right? We're not just moving the data, but we're moving the awareness along with the data, the context along with the data. And finally, we have the act phase. So this is exactly where Orbit comes in and intervenes and gives you triggers, warnings, gives you those decision support prompts, after action reports. It's saying, here is what was completed in the task, and this is how it was completed in the task, and why it was completed in the task. So the act is finally the action execution phase of Orbit. So we have weaved in data, context, and also situational awareness at every single phase of this cognitive modeling. Therefore, Orbit is not just your regular predictive engine. It is a true intelligent cognitive system where every phase is gated and information passing from every phase is filtered, understood, predicted, and can be tracked to understand where is the decision making coming from, what factors influenced it, and why we are making a particular conclusion as we are. And therefore, Orbit, in true reasons, is an agentic AI that is able to think, act, and adapt like humans, because it is formulated or architectured by the OODA loop computational architecture.
So going a little bit deeper here, on all these levels, what would be some information, right, that is being taken, that's being looked at, that's being observed? So it can be any elements, right? Elements could be communication, it could be email exchange, it could be phone calls, anything that we see where there's information presented in one form or another, right? It could also be the behaviors. Any signals that are out there that are coming in from data that we're receiving from other systems, right? It doesn't only have to be behavioral data. It can also be performance data of how we have performed, for instance, because we can look at that as well. And with that, we can see whether there are gaps in our current understanding and perception, right? So that goes into the interpretation of that information, of whether I understand the information that's presented to me, and the model actually being, or the platform being able to pick up on that, oh, there is a misalignment happening right now. They have not communicated over this critical aspect of the mission. So most likely the mission aspect regarding my research scientist activities will not be completed because I did not receive the communication that I only had 5 minutes left before
I ignored
my oxygen is depleted. So we have an issue here, right? And that then is going into level 3 projection, right, of anticipated threats, anticipated risk. What are the risks, and how can we intervene earlier right there? So it's more of a computational situational awareness modeling and architecturing that we have completed that also then can look at team-level cognitive signals. And that has to do with the team alignment, but also with biases, right? Humans are very good with biases. We're very good in filling in information quickly because that's helping us to speed up our decision process. But that's also sometimes where, when we are saying, okay, and you probably all had that, right? You just did a new project, you invest a lot of money in this project, maybe it's an improvement process that you have done. You kind of know that if you continue, you're not getting the return of investment as you would have hoped. So you can make the decision of saying, you know what, we're completing the project, we invested already so much money, or you can say we're stopping it, we're going the wrong direction. I know we wasted a lot, but we learned a lot. You know, we had failures, but we learned from the failures. What do you think is more likely? A, continuing and finalizing the project to reach project end goal, maybe not a return, or B, saying, okay, we learned through it, but we're stopping. A, right. And that's a bias, a cost-sunk bias right there, right? And that's what's picking up on it. So with that, on the Orient side of things, we're not only looking at individuals or you-specific person-related data, we're actually looking at the magnitude of the big data stream that's coming in so that we can decipher and understand what's happening on the individual level. Maybe he or she needs training because they don't have the skill set yet for being that scientist. Like I did definitely not have the skill set. Maybe you didn't have the skill set, right? But that might help us. Understanding the team dynamics, understanding that specifically and aggregating that overall to the organization of where the organization is so that at one point we can benchmark our organization with another organization. Because at one point we do want to have competitive advantage, right? We do need to, and we do know we need to work on our system. So we have on one hand then the operational data, whether that's your big digital twin of having connected everything within your facility and within manufacturing to the human data, right? Or we might have a digital twin of our operation going to space, seeing it live, right? And the human data meaning objectively and subjectively. We might have, and you all had to fill out this, employee satisfaction survey, right? Probably everybody had to do that before. Right, that can be fed in too. but we're now we're triangulating our methods of how we look at things and how the platform is looking at things.
So now that we know the importance of having operational data in addition with the behavioral data, the human side of data, how is Orbit unique? Well, Orbit's power lies in its reasoning engine. So it reasons not just with respect to the project data or operational data, but it brings in the cognitive approach of blending the operational data with the human behavioral data and converts it into risk-aware, explainable, and actionable decisions that human beings can utilize at the end of the day. So what do I mean by all of that? So think about the input going into the Orbit, at least in the decide phase. So we do have situational awareness pouring in from the previous orient phase. We have projection, perception, comprehension, and we are looking to move towards the action part of it. So how can we get that information in? What is a team alignment state? Is there any miscommunications? Is there any delays, any latency in decision making? What are the performance trend looks like? And what is my historic cognition mapping? So historically, am I a high performer, low performer? What does my average baseline kind of look like when I'm working on different projects, right? So all of that data comes from the human side of things. And then the reasoning function operates on top of the input layer and then comes up with those risk scoring analyses, a decision timing. So am I on top of things? Am I slowing down? What is the risk in following the continued path? So if I'm having this latency in communication, 2 seconds over 1 minute, 2 seconds over 10 minutes is going to be different in a space operation, right? The shuttle would have navigated hundreds and thousands of kilometers away from where it should actually go, ends up in a different planet. That's a whole different story. So it's important to understand what is the trade-off that we have in terms of performance versus latency, the risk prediction, and when do we need intervention? So do I call the mission off or let the alert be known in first 1 minute, or do I wait for 1 minute, 10 seconds, 20 seconds? What is the reasoning in conjunction with the human behavior and operational data that I can use to make actionable decisions? So that's your outcome intelligence, predicting based on the data, combining situational awareness, cognitive state, and operational data, and delivering insights like you've never seen before. So you're looking at failure predictions. That's the return of investments. What is a deviation from expected trajectories, and what is your current performance prediction? So if you continue this way, is it recommended? If it's not, what is the status of your team, your project, all your KPIs in your organization? What does it look like? Right? And this is happening adaptively in real time, and that's where the magic is. Because the output is going to be explainable recommendation with traceability of exactly where the ball stopped rolling in the wrong direction, and why we need to start thinking about making those changes as and when it happens, and generate those risk alerts, interventions, guidance, whatever you need to do, and also return on investment estimates. So if I make the change right now when I see things happening, off the trajectory, something falling apart, there is a decline in the cognitive state compared to the KPI I want to achieve, what happens? What is my return on investment? Or if I wait for 1 month, 2 months, I wait for 1 week, 1 day before my deliverable, how is that going to look like? We've all worked on group projects. We work on, in adult life, we work on team projects, organizational projects. We know what happens when you're pushing towards the last lane,
Yeah,
right?
Dr. Menon, we know we're never driven by the cost metric.
Right, never, ever. Never have I ever. ROI, right? It's one of your never have I ever. But that exactly is the power of Orbit in combining cognitive state along with operational data to deliver results that are actionable to the end user, and it maps to the understanding and awareness, situational awareness of the end user, and therefore Orbit is not just any prediction system that's out there that gives you, here is a return on investment, here is a trajectory, here is the risk, here are some graphs, be happy, I'm doing something. No. Orbit goes a step ahead. In fact, 100 steps towards mankind, because in this loop, we have mankind finally. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not just AI optimizing tasks and doing predictions on its own, but it's including the people in the team to say, if this team continues to function in this rate at the current state for this particular task, this is the expected outcome. So for the first time, we are having human in the loop, in the truest sense, through orbit, being a more cognitive-oriented computational OODA system. It thinks, acts, behaves, and adapts like humans do. And it evolves and learns as and when things get better.
And that's why we have in the ACT phase the real-time interventions. And that's very powerful, right? You're communicating with your team and suddenly you did see, okay, there is a note, well, maybe you need to revisit your root cause analysis. There might be other influences on that of why you're delayed within your delivery. It also looks at, and team stabilizing sounds a little bit funny, but because it's looking at the cognitive load and those cognitive models and comparing that between one another, it actually supports us in the form that it can show and signal, here there is something where we haven't shared that information, or here there is a bias introduced and we are running all the way to the end because of our cost-sunk bias that we're holding, even so we know it at the end, we know it's not the correct way to do, right? And in that, what it also can do is picking up, if you have, and most of organizations have your training academy, you have your trainings, right? It can connect to that, meaning if it identifies a skill set that is not fully present at the moment, or you have a growth career path, it can show, here, this is related to structured problem solving. This is related to understanding AI prompting. You might want to take a look. It is directly connected to your development, to the human development, and that's making it very powerful in that sense. It is also learning then, right? Capturing what has happened and showing improvements in form of not how we can improve, but also understanding that, yes, I understood I might have, that's an option from my side of how you can improve, but there are other ways as well. So ACT closes the loop overall to continuous learning on the human side, taking that development side into account. So often what we see is, and this is kind of showing us how that drift translates into performance collapse before we often know. Most of us, and you can raise your hand, who is mostly looking at your KPIs and metrics in form of results, end of the month? Most of us, right? Especially leadership, most of us were looking all the way at the lagging performance indicators. These are all the way historically in the past, right? I mean, it has already happened, so we're already late. It does not help us to correct our course so that we're not deviating much quicker. What does help us to correct our course is looking at our cognitive states and leading indicators, right? So cognitive states in addition to any other leading indicators. When we now have our normal operation, right, nothing is happening, where I'm the scientist, you're in the controls and, you know, doing your work, we have normal operation, nothing is happening. Let's go a little bit further. Suddenly,
I dropped the ball, and
She
she
dropped
needs
the ball.
oxygen. I couldn't find the code.
You couldn't find the code and she couldn't communicate with me. One communication error. And suddenly we have a different cognitive drift. I'm still thinking I'm doing it. I'm still thinking I have to go out there, do my mission, and on the other side it's like, nope, she's not doing her mission, she's not researching. And then it continues, because now we both don't have awareness of what in the world is going on. I'm questioning myself. What am I supposed to do now? And
On my end, I'm trying to communicate. I can't find the code. Things are beeping. There's a red alarm, and she's just one of the screens.
I'm just a dot.
Right, she is just one data dot. I have 5 different screens that I have to respond to. So for me, I'm questioning, do I respond to her red alert? There's another one red alert coming. How do I respond to 5 of them at the same time, and how do I prioritize? High stakes environment.
With situational degradation, it's not shown yet in our performance metrics, because they're not lagging indicators yet. It's right at that threshold where we see that things go south, right? But it's not there yet. When we then, everything collapsed.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I didn't get oxygen.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to bring you back to life.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing that. But the interesting part, and especially what Orbit does, it starts detecting those subtle differences already way in the beginning so that we can adjust course more quicker than we usually can when we're just thinking and waiting on our performance or lagging indicators, right? And in between, that will help then to really navigate and understand what's going on to be discussed as well with the team.
So why is Orbit really an agentic AI? Because yes, there is automation of task, but it goes a step ahead and establishes a paradigm for having a cognitive OODA-based agentic AI, where we have human-centric behavioral intelligence. Orbit not only automates a task, but it also collects the environment data, operational data, including the behavior data, and puts humans back in the loop, in the conversation, not just in the decision point, but let's care about humans, how they perceive the data, how they comprehend the data, and how are they moving through the loop in different cognitive states of data processing. And it also has reasoning model, which is going to reason and come up with predictions saying, this is the state of the human, the team, the organization, the individual. And here is my operational data, my goal, my target, my mission that I have to optimize. How do I bring these two in alignment? And what is the best path forward? So there's goal-oriented reasoning, combining human-AI alignment at its finest. And most interestingly, it's proactive. So a lot of the AI agents or the KPI dashboards that we just try to automate, it's looking at the past historic data and trying to automate a task in the present. There may be errors that have happened in the past. You're still learning and taking better actions in the future. But Orbit is proactive. It looks for any misalignment as and when the misalignment is happening through those cognitive stages in the gates mechanism. So it proactively brings things back into alignment and intervenes, introduces early interventions, risk mitigation measures, and alerts humans in the loop at different stages saying, hey, you may want to take a look at this while it is happening, and not 3 months later, 6 months later, or when things break down, right? And that is the difference between having lagging performance indicators like KPI and having something like Orbit that is doing adaptation real time. So finally, it learns, adapts, and it adapts not just the operational data, but it adapts to human intentions, human cues, and what are human operators trying to achieve with respect to their goal. So it's optimized with respect to humans. Therefore, it is a computationally cognitive system-based agentic AI, a step above and beyond most of the autonomous, task-oriented agentic AI that's out there. So the cool part about Orbit is that it not only does the reasoning, adapts, and does all the cool things, it finally presents all the results in a really nice dashboard explainable format. And what's nice about Orbit, it is naturally explainable by the architecture of OODA loop. Each and every cognitive stages acts as gating mechanisms, and you know exactly what is going into that stage. You know the operational data, and you also know the human situational awareness. This means that data by design and decisions by design are traceable and explainable in nature. Explainability is not an afterthought in Orbit. Explainability is designed with respect to human cognitive process and to support human cognitive process, where everything is explained as and when things happen, and interventions are given to the human operator, and then you have explainable decisions, risk outcomes, recommendation given as and when it happens in real time for adaptation. So humans can now make better decisions that are aligned with the outcomes. So there are no lagging performance indicators. I'm not waiting for a KPI to go down and show in the dashboard, and at that time it's historic data anyways, right? Orbit proactively jumps in and corrects the mechanism as and when it happens. Because often, lagging indicators are usually the effect. And when we try to correct it in the next cycle, we are just patching a Band-Aid and we forget about the cause. that caused the lagging effect, the symptom, which was degradation KPI. Orbit, on the other hand, looks at the cognitive decline which shows up before the KPIs go down, right? KPI is just an effect of what happened. Something went wrong. Somebody dropped the ball. When did it happen? How did it happen? But in retrospect, it's already happened, right? So the cognitive decline happens first before we actually see it on paper in terms of those lagging KPI metrics. And this is where Orbit comes in and proactively provides those risk mitigation strategies and explainable outcomes that allows you to see where things are falling in the loop and where you need to have risk mitigation strategies or training strategies, workshop. What is that assistance that an individual needs, team needs, an organization needs to meet their KPIs in the truest sense? So that's basically what we kind of are coming to a full circle over here. So Orbit is not just any agentic AI. It's an AI that calibrates human behavior and outputs and outcomes so that the humans are equipped with more data-driven decision-making capacity, and they're able to work on their team, work on the task without being obstructed by an agentic AI sitting on their shoulders and talking to them all the time. Because Orbit is doing all of this learning offline, in parallel to the humans, right? So Orbit feeds both, or takes in both the operational data, human data, and all of this is learned parallelly in real time, and Orbit is working hand in hand with humans at each individual cognitive phase to support the operations and outcomes. And it doesn't mean that Orbit does not need human feedback and human loop. It does. And in fact, it does come back and say, hey, I have noticed this bias prediction. Why don't you take a look? I think there's a bias somewhere in the learning or prediction, or there's a misalignment, or there's a risk that you need to take a look at. There's a deviation. There's something wrong. So yes, Orbit does come back and occasionally ask for human feedback, which is essentially what we need in an evolutionary learning system like Orbit. Orbit learns and adapts organizational data, behavioral data over time, and is able to predict newer outcomes even if it has not seen it. And here we have a really nice quick snippet, a demo of sneak peek into our platform. Let's see if this plays. So this is Orbit, our organizational behavior intelligence platform. And here is your login. So let's say you're logging in your credentials.
We are a logistic team right now.
And this is what a dashboard will look like, where you have performance indicators, data, and it shows different situational awareness of all the team members, recommendations, and it is mapping it with respect to different tasks. And that's what it is showing. So you can upload your team data. Let's say you have a meeting data that's being uploaded, or some kind of project data that is being uploaded. It gives you recommendations, summary, training, and also tells you what is happening in progress, what has been acknowledged, and what actions can be taken with respect to that.
And how we see here, I don't know if you can see all this, but it does map again the situation awareness side, looking at perception, comprehension. Are we truly understanding our current situation, what's going on, or is there a lag?
And then you have your own KPIs, dashboards, metrics, and different situational awareness curves over here, predictions. This is from the reasoning model saying, hey, here is what your situational awareness looks like. Here is the communication look like. This is what people performance, feedback, and other customized metrics look like.
What we did here, we specifically looked at communication. Let's say we have our early stand-up meetings or our Scrum meeting, whatever meeting we have. That's the communication we're looking at specifically here. So there's an aspect of, are we truly practicing deviation management? Are we truly practicing effective communication? Are we truly giving feedback to each other? That's what's captured here.
And here is the Orbit Assist, where you can talk to the AI agent, and then you can get a whole summary of what really happened in the meeting, and what are those metric scores, what do they mean. So this is the explainable, traceable side of Orbit intelligence, providing feedback to the user. And you can have dynamic suggestions, again, pop up just like you're used to large language models, and you can check on different trends, again, team, individual trends, and so on. And you can even set a baseline metric and target and goal that you want to improve, and see what the return on investment looks like and what the predictions would look like given those new goals, and what would it take you to achieve or reach there.
So these were several meetings across several months that were uploaded as an example here for how that would look like.
And this is a classic example of evolutionary learning that we've been talking about. So Orbit is not just your zero-day system. It continuously learns how this team member has been doing across several meetings, across months, years, whatever that looks like. And trying to map a personal profile to say, is this person even fit for the role that they are in? Because I was definitely not the right person for Paycom. I don't do multitasking that well, and I was overwhelmed. So this is also a really nice way of gauging what is an individual's true strengths. And if we want to have workforce retention, better performance, can we identify a better place for these individuals, maybe a better position where they can move around in the same organization, or even in the same team? What kind of training do I need to be a better Paycom person, right? Maybe I need more training on how to find my information. How do I manage my time? So I need specific training with respect to my role to do things better. So that's, again, the magic of Orbit, where Orbit can come and tell you, here are your strengths, here is the performance, here is your situational awareness with respect to the tasks that you have to complete and what can help you get there. And this is just showing different summaries and logs of all the meetings.
So why is this all mattering, right? What we talked about the last hour almost. Well, what we see is that all the failures or the events that are happening that are leading to a degraded performance, they aren't often technical. They're very much human, right? It's a human-like event that's occurring. It's also because we cannot truly see those cognitive risks yet. We have not really identified on how can we capture those, how we can observe them and detect them. Normally, it's already too late. The event has already happened, right? And we see that when we have airplane crashes, things like traumatic events. It has already occurred. We don't know what happened before. Also, what we see is because there is so much technology advancement, right? That operation is outrunning human cognition. There's so much overwhelming information oftentimes that it has outpaced the cognition part. And because when cognition fails, everything else fails, right? If we cannot come to a decision, if we cannot understand what's going on, that has an implication. So with that, what we see is we need something that is assistive, supportive in a way that we can operate in a modern world scenario, especially in high-stake environments.
And validation should not be just limited to one human at the end making decisions, because we really haven't considered the cognitive load of that singular human that everybody's depending on to make the right decision, right? So everybody was relying on me, the Paycom person, to handle all of the individual batches of information. But individually, yes, I was responsible for them, but collectively, I was responsible for the entire operations. And yet, although I am human in the loop, my cognitive awareness and my situational awareness was somehow ignored, and the only focus was on automation, right? And that is the missing piece that we are trying to highlight over here. Yes, automation helps, but let's put automation in perspective of human-centric behavior intelligence, of situational awareness, to support them in the way that humans actually need to be supported.
So this is combining our research since 2017. Since 2017, we have been working on capturing those behaviors, capturing cognitive aspects and things like that. And we're working with several partners already of implementing this form into their organization. But as we know, every domain, every organization is different. So we still running 1 or 2 pilot partners. If anybody's interested or just chatting of opportunities, chatting with us about it, please come to us, talk to us. We're very much excited about that opportunity of leading the human-centric agentic AI generation to the next level as well.
We'll be here after the talk and also cocktails and cosmos. Yes, I will make it.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for staying with us.
Thank you for being such a great audience. Questions?
Where do we start? Oh, there's the...
Thanks. Oh, yeah, fantastic talk, very interesting. I'm just kind of curious with your metrics, like how do you measure things like comprehension or perception? Like,
So we have developed everything has been starting off with hand coding. So we derived a classification scheme that makes us the ability to capture that specifically. And there we look at what does comprehension mean? How is it shown within communication, for instance, if somebody's comprehending something? How is it shown when a team is interacting? So that's why we have started 2017. We have used a massive amount of data just to defining that classification of being accurate and validating that what we're actually measuring, that we're measuring comprehension and not something else. That was very important in this process. So it started very rudimentary, just an Excel sheet and a definition and going from there.
Yeah, we have hand codings for everything. That's how we started. And then we built on the data that we have literally been working on from 2017. And just to give you a snippet of what that actually means in this particular context, from some of our past research, you can look things up. What we found was consistently when you talk about high-performance individuals or high-performance teams data, they talk less. So yes, you do have the 4 states of situational awareness, the comprehension, projection, and then, perception, comprehension, projection, and action. So what you see in high-performance team is perception, comprehension. Everybody spends a little bit of time because you're assimilating information from the environment. You're doing analyses, trying to understand what this means in terms of things you have to achieve, the goals, the tasks you have to complete, right? But then they have a game plan, which is projection, and they jump directly to action. And most of them loop between the action phase, and which is basically saying, let me get out, let me try this game plan, let's see how it is going. If it works well, great. If it's not, let me come back, let's regroup, let's have a meeting again, stand-up meeting, and let's go back to the drawing board. Let's have the corrective actions more often. The key word here is action. Whereas the low-performance team, and I'm sure you guys can relate to it at work or even nightmares way back in the school when you did group projects, what happens in low-performance team? There is one leader, and everybody else is counting on this one person to make all the decisions. So there's a lot of talking going on, a lot of passive words going on in the initial comprehension phase or the perception phase. Everybody's active there. Oh, yeah, I understand what you're talking. Yeah, give me some ideas. That sounds great. Let me crack a few jokes. And then it's just empty words with nothing that points towards a task of where I'm going, right?
No
so
action.
They spend a lot of time in the lower layers of situational awareness and very much less in the action, what actually takes you to the target or goal you want to accomplish. So again, going back to coding, so this is the historic data and understanding the behaviors, how it plays out in the world, and we're able to look at that and make predictions.
And our prediction on the team level is to 96% accurate. So we actually talked about that last year here. So maybe you can find it on YouTube still. I think everything is up if you want to go look at that and look at the specifics of situation awareness.
That was a surprising result even for us because team accuracy was higher than the individual variation. Individual was about 89 point something, 90%, but
With
still
the
good.
models that we ran, yeah.
Yeah, still good. It's personalized recommendations. But team shows that collectively there is a good amount of synergy when we all come together, work towards a common goal, and the patterns show up much more stronger when you look at collective groups and teams and so on. And we're able to predict things better too.
So you mentioned high performers, and I want to kind of branch off of that. Do you take into consider neurodivergence and neurodivergent individuals in your analysis?
Great question, and thank you for bringing that question. And that is basically the highlight of Orbit, right? We don't even have to include that explicitly or even label it, because what's nice about Orbit is it is made for you. It's designed for you to support you in accomplishing your tasks. So your behaviors is noted as far as the operational data is concerned. Right? So the whole alignment is, how can I help you accomplish your task and not replace you, but how can I help you and augment you with the capabilities to help you accomplish the task? And therefore, we want to introduce Orbit as a new paradigm of how we bring humans back in alignment with technology and not having the fear of technology replacing humans. I would like to think we are irreplaceable, right?
We are. We are of value. Yeah, I think they're running around with the...
Okay. Yeah, so as a recently graduated UAH computer science student, I know the department has done research in like using devices that measure cognitive loads such as eye tracking, EEG headsets. Are you using any of that data to be able to measure the cognitive load? Because I know, like you said, using the flight simulator, you're paying attention to a lot of different screens. If you had eye tracking or EEG, would that help with this type of problem to be able to see what you were paying attention to or not paying attention to?
Great question again. So not particularly for Orbit, but we do have a history of research which precisely does that, and what has inspired into the OODA loop-based Orbit design, because we looked at eye tracking data, EEG data, to find when the stimulus happened and when we actually make the decision. And it is quite evident when you see biological signals, physiological signals, you can see an impulse saying, oh, I noticed something. And then by the time you take action, again, we have seen this consistently with high performance and low performance individuals and teams. When we give more information, that's where the explainability comes. It's easier for people to make better decisions. But at the same time, we have a thin line between cognitive overload and overwhelm and cognitive assistance. Right? So again, that's why you need a technology that can adapt. Because what we found was, yes, adding explainability to explain the decisions and make the recommendations of the black box understood gives user that better trust in adoption, which is needed, right? So we can trace that using eye tracker, where you can see that without any kind of explainability, the same environment, the same thing with EEGs, the person takes longer time to complete the tasks, and at the same time, they're spend a lot of time in the pursuit. Basically, they're blinking and they're looking around, right? Their eye tracking shows that it is not focused. Whereas when you throw in explainability to understand the decision making, where is the information placed? And again, having the OODA loop, which we started there actually with eye tracking, and we saw results, and we thought, wow, this is amazing. Because suddenly you could see how the brain is processing information. So there was less looking around, and there was more focus and more pursuit. So the eye tracking went down, the blinking went down, and it was more towards focus and pursuit, which means I have the information, I understand, and I'm ready to act, right? Which is consistent with what we've seen historically with regard to the lower layers of situational awareness, where you're talking a lot, you don't really have deeper understanding to take action, versus the higher performance being, I'm ready to take action. So that's a thin line we are navigating as far as those external stimulus and measuring those with eye tracking EEG, how much information is too much and how much is just right. So that's where Orbit comes in to adapt based on how are you handling your load, and then present information to you according to that, and reasons and explains why you need to do this or why this recommendation was made for traceability and explainability.
Just checking to see if this mic is working. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for speaking about HCI. I don't think it's nearly discussed enough in the AI space in general. I am still kind of struggling to understand, because I'm an AI engineer myself, is Orbit meant to basically be a model of, like an HCI model basically for organizations, or is it meant to kind of hit the trifecta and the Venn diagram of like human performance, HCI, and for whatever system that they happen to be working on?
It is your trifecta that you're talking about. It's an ACI where it combines all the information, environment information, human behavioral information, and delivers results to you in a dashboard format for actionable insights, just like you've seen in the demo.
just one follow-up question. Did you guys publish any papers as far as like the models that are powering this are concerned?
Not Orbit yet, because we have copyright and patents pending.
Do you plan to?
Yes.
Awesome.
Stay in touch.
All right, so this one might just be tangentially related, but can Orbit, based off the history of the meetings that have been uploaded, indicate which individuals would be best suited for a task such as, like with the diffusion of innovation, like, well, I want the innovators to be in this one, but I only want like 2 or 3, because they might, type A personalities might conflict to help build up your team to accomplish your task.
So it can be built out towards that, absolutely, because you need to look at personality, you need to look at other aspects that are currently not fed in, but it's definitely an opportunity there to see, do I have the right people on the team, right? That's basically it. Or the person I'm putting in, or maybe we're supporting to take a new position, do they have all the skill set needed? And based on that, we can already see of, supporting them through training to get them ready. I often see a lot of leaders, supervisors that are pulled in to become a team lead or even further. There are a lot of technical things. They're very good in their expertise, very, very good, but they lack a lot of social skills of what a leader actually needs at their job to get the job done right. And to support the development of the entire organization. So that's also something where the whole development side, the growth side, we're attaching that to it and making it specific to organizations.
And just to quickly add, a lot of this idea initially came from some of the earlier proposals we did with DoD, and they were all focused on the same skill-based recruiting, right? So how can we have the right team members that we are sending out to this high-stakes mission and make sure we are successful? So how can we make the prediction? And individually understanding what are the risks and what are the strengths of individual team members, and how do we allocate them properly to each team's mission success? So those were some of our early thinking points and how we got into this. And yes, we do have data in some of the previous papers is published out there that actually shows that when you look at things in the data space, you can begin to see those common clusters, which is amazing just from the behavioral data. And you are able to predict, performance, skill, and understand who might be better with whom, and how can we have a more skill-based recruiting, right? So if I need somebody with this skill that is needed, so how can I get that or make that happen? Or somebody does have it in the organization, how can they be better moved to a position that works best for them?
Moreover, it tells us who we actually have in the organization.
Yes.
The transparency of that, right? Because oftentimes we have everybody inside the organization, we just don't know. HR doesn't know. No, there's no transparency about that. So this gives kind of the opportunity for becoming more transparent as an organization, but also being open to learn, right? Understanding, okay, what are my weaknesses, which hurts sometimes to look at, but it's the truth. If we want to be competitive, right, especially as an organization now, we do need to look at it. If we want to be high performing, we know the risk in this high stake environments, we need to prepare a certain way, and how can we do that? And this is what's
a really classic case study that we all know that happened recently with the mass firing. Meta, Google, employees received one-line emails saying fired because of bad performance. So now Orbit provides another avenue for coding. Tell me exactly what bad performance means, right? So show me the task. This is a dashboard. Everybody has access to it. So you have individual dashboards, managerial level dashboards. So quantify bad performance. Show me those areas. So that way, when you're going for a job in another organization, you don't have to leave with a black mark of shame of bad performance, and you don't have to defend yourself, because guess what? You have a dashboard that can speak volumes on your behalf and tell you exactly how much you've excelled, right? So it's a win-win.